I'm pleased to present the interim report for the inquiry into the early childhood education and care sector in Victoria. The Select 2026. The Select Committee for this inquiry was established by this Parliament following serious child abuse allegations against educator Joshua Brown in July 2025. These deeply distressing allegations most profoundly affect our most vulnerable, Victorian children, babies and toddlers and their families, exposing critical systemic failures. The interim report gives an update of evidence the committee has received so far, including 99 submissions and 5 days of public hearings. It has been informed by the lived and living experiences of children, families, educators, advocates, regulator, service providers, unions, community organisations, First Nations and disability-led representatives across the sector. The committee has heard a range of emerging themes, including how the early childhood sector is undergoing a significant change, with surging demand and increasing complexity. However, regulation, oversight and investment have not always kept pace. The committee has heard of challenges in workforce shortages and sustained pressure on educators and insufficient resources, support and training to meet children's increasing presentation of complex needs. The inquiry has also heard concerns about the rapid expansion of the for-profit sector and the risk that this growth presents in shifting paramount focus away from children's safety and well-being, placing further strain on quality and oversight. During the course of the inquiry, there was also several changes that have occurred, and they have included the strengthening of the Working with Children's Check, the new regulator VECRA, the National Early Childhood Register, new offences and penalties, and a CCTV trial in certain areas. There is unequivocal evidence so far that stronger stewardship is needed at both the Victorian and national levels. Safety, quality and accountability must be guaranteed, not optional. The committee will continue its work with a final hearing in May. The final report will be delivered with findings and recommendations by the 30th of July 2026. I thank all those who have contributed so far, particularly those who have shared their experiences. Your voices are central to this work. As expected, there is high public interest in this inquiry, and I would like to thank my committee colleagues, Deputy Chair Mr Galea, my Greens colleague Dr Sarah Mansfield, Ms Crozier, Ms Barth and Ms Imakora, for their work so far to ensure that a range of views are heard on this sensitive and important issue. And finally, I would like to thank the committee secretariat staff, Committee Manager Matt Newington, Inquiry Officer Te Kuanga Awatere, Administrative Officer Sylvette Bassi, and other staff in the committee's office, provided by Julie Barnes and Monique Riordan Hill. I commend this report to the House.
Ms Galea.
Thank you, President. I'm also pleased to rise to share a brief contribution on this report and acknowledge our Chair, Ms Gray Barbario, and indeed all other committee members, I believe all of whom are in the chamber, for the work that we've undertaken so far. I'd also like to particularly thank our Secretariat, Matt Newington and Te Kuanga Awatere, and their team who've been a wonderful support to us as well. This is as Ms Gray Barbario said, an important inquiry for us to be looking at. It did arise out of some shocking circumstances last year, and as though at the time that this House was considering this inquiry, the rapid review had already, of course, been initiated, and since the commencement of the inquiry, that rapid review has then reported and the government has indeed acquitted those actions. And indeed, so this inquiry presented a valuable opportunity for the House, through our committee, to examine, in particular, the rapid review and the government's actions in response to it, as well as other factors and other settings in the early childhood education and care sector. Indeed, we heard from witnesses overwhelming, if not unanimous, support for the government's actions in acquitting those rapid review recommendations. And indeed, we've heard from multiple witnesses who've acknowledged that Victoria, as of now has the strongest settings and protections in place. There was also various other topics canvassed, and indeed many topics that we will be able to, as a committee, explore as we conclude the final hearings and deliberate on the substantive final report, including the interplay with the Australian Quality Framework, Australian Quality Standards, standards and various other aspects of how the system as a whole operates and can be most effectively supported and most effectively regulated in order to ensure that it is providing as much of a safety security that parents rightly expect. And I look forward to discussing the final report at a further date.
Ms. Grazier.
President, thank you. I also rise to make a few remarks in relation to the interim report into the inquiry into the early childhood education and care sector in Victoria. And as other committee members have acknowledged, the work that has been undertaken so far with the number of hearings and those witnesses that the committee has heard from, and I think there has been some significant evidence that have provided, and indeed the work that has been undertaken to ensure that the events that have been disclosed last year never happen again in the state. I also want to acknowledge the work of the Secretariat, of course, who have put in an enormous effort in bringing the hearings together and being able to coordinate all of the witnesses. But I did want to just make some remarks regarding a number of the witnesses. We heard from the Ombudsman and the Commissioner for Children and Young People. Very significant evidence that was provided to the committee around significant shortfalls in areas like funding, where the government has not provided enough support in these areas to deal with many of the issues, but also acknowledge where there has been significant work, and that has been done by a number of organisations that have provided extensive evidence to us around the work that they have been doing since this horrific incident came to light, but before that. And I think it has been unfortunate that some witnesses and others have questioned and almost demonised their role that they play in this very important sector around choice, around an ability to cater for children across Victoria and to be able to support them in these very important early education years. And so I would say to those witnesses again, thank you very much for coming before the committee. We will continue our work, look at the failings that have occurred and ensure that we make recommendations to further strengthen the system.
Ms. Makora.
I just want to also make a contribution on this interim report and thank the Secretariat for the work so far, but also to acknowledge the horrific circumstances in the particular case that brought this inquiry into being, and to acknowledge that part of the contributions that we've heard so far significantly were around definitions of grooming, definitions of what safety means, and what some multiple peak bodies have said about the strengths and weaknesses in the space. So this interim report forms a really good baseline to the next steps in our inquiry. In particular, it paints a picture of the reforms that have been undertaken since the incident came to light, both in a number of different spheres, but also we're looking very carefully at the regulatory environment that childcare service delivery sits within in this state. So I look forward to the next phase of the inquiry, and I thank everybody that's been involved, and particularly those that have submitted and spent time with the committee in the public hearings to date.
Ms. Barr.
I'd like to rise and make a brief contribution on the tabling of the interim report of the early childhood education and care sector in Victoria. And just following on from my colleagues in this select inquiry, it's a very, very important inquiry, and of course it did begin from the outset of that shocking and deplorable situation where children were allegedly, and there is a court case at hand, but terribly manipulated by somebody who should have been a trusted figure. Very interesting, some of the discussions that we've heard in relation to the point around compliance in the early childhood sector does not necessarily mean child safety. And compliance is one thing, but making sure that child safety in every corner of every centre is fulfilled, and achieving that aim is far more than just compliance. I also think that we spoke to and heard from many in the childcare sector who'd been in that sector for a very long time, and I want to put on record my thanks to all the staff who have dedicated their lives to children. I also want to speak about, I don't think there needs to be this divide of we must have profit or we must exclude profit from the sector. We need a matrix of profit, not-for-profit, community and council-led, and we shouldn't be demonising one over the other. In many parts of rural Victoria, there is very much so childcare deserts, and we need to fulfil those to support our regional families to access great childcare. We really look forward to continuing on this work, and I thank the Secretariat for their diligent efforts, and I think the final report will be most illuminating.